what was the principle, the inception of this story? Where did this character come to you? What were you up to? And how did he materialize in your imagination?
What I was up to when I thought of it was I was still shooting It's Complicated. And I was shooting in Brooklyn with Meryl Streep and Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin. And I don't know whether it was that we're all kind of the same age, that I was thinking about us, or you don't know where ideas come from. It's too hard to even articulate, you know. But the idea of an older man going to work as an intern just sort of made me giggle. But I didn't make that the movie. You know, there's very little about that he's an older man being an intern. It really becomes, you know, just a friendship. I felt I had written a lot of love stories. I never wanted this one to be a love story. You know, because at first I think, well, where would he go to work anyway? Oh, obviously a startup, because I want to put him in the most foreign place. I don't want him to be. But then I liked that, you know, I did make it the place he had lived. I mean, rather worked in all those years. So kind of brought it around for him. And then it's a woman, but I never thought about them being in a romantic relationship.
Well, there's a scene where they're in a hotel bed in San Francisco. And again, I guess any other film would have gone to that place. And I think that's an incredible choice, that they are not going to do that. That is not this movie.
Well, I don't know if at that point in this movie anybody, I mean, let's say something happened to me and, like, you know, I died at that point. I don't think somebody else would have come in and had them start kissing. At that point in this movie, that's our movie, you know. He wouldn't even come in when she says, come look at my room. You know, he stands there and he goes, I see it. It's very nice. He would not cross the threshold.
And he has 1 foot on the floor, too.
He does.
I want to talk a little bit more about Jules. Jules is somebody who is incredibly successful. She's not an employee. She's the boss. Was that also critical to you in this story?
Yes. Yes, because it's a new kind of character for me to write, too, that's an entrepreneur, started her own business, started in her dining room with a few people, tried on all the clothes herself. You know, she just started with a one-woman operation, and that's what can happen now. 20 years ago, that couldn't happen. You can't start a business like that. You can't hit your 5-year goal in 9 months. But you can now, because the internet is a store that's open 24/7. So, you know, it's endless possibilities. And when I did all my research for the movie and I went to visit different websites, I went to these massive places and I was like, wow, there's so many people. And they said, yeah, we're taking over the next floor and the next floor. It's, you know, obviously a booming business.
Well, I think there's a line that she's met her 5-year goal in 9 months. Is that right? So she is very good at what she does.
She's very good at what she does, but, you know, I sort of equated it to, well, you wrote the script. Are you really the person to direct it? Or should we bring in somebody that maybe knows how to talk that language, you know? So that's what I would tell Annie Hathaway, you know. To me, it's something, and that wasn't said to me, but I think I think we all know there's great writer-directors, but there are directors that know a lot more than me about directing, but they don't necessarily know a lot more about directing my movies. And that's how she feels about her business.
Speaking of your movies, I think it was 28 years ago that you wrote a movie called Baby Boom.
Yes.
And I'm curious if you see, a lot of people love that movie.
Thank you.
I wonder if it's
I wrote
possible.
it with Charles Shire.
I wonder if it's possible to see that movie as some sort of companion piece to this in terms of what's changed in those 28 years.
Yes, that definitely occurred to me, not while I was writing it, but while I was making it. And I was saying to Anne Hathaway one day, you know, I think in some way this is very interesting for me to have made that movie in my 30s, make this movie in my 60s. And she said, well, can I tell you something about that movie? My mother went into labor with me while watching that movie. And I said, wait, you're not even that old. She said, no, it was on TV. So somehow in some secondhand shop, she found a Baby Boom poster, and she hung it in her trailer and had it up the entire time we were making the movie. So she felt it, and I felt it, and I think she feels that her character sort of stood on the shoulders of that character.
And what does this movie, you think, have to say about balance? And we obviously end the film with a story about balance, about trying to get balance. Is it, to you, a work-life balance? Is it a personal balance?
All of the
As you're thinking of the balances that you're trying to communicate in this film, what are you thinking about before you even start directing, as you're writing the film?
Yeah, well, so many things, really. But And I've tried Tai Chi, and I don't know how many of you tried it. It's the best thing you can do for yourself as you get older. And it's quite hard. It looks simple, but it's quite hard. And it is about your balance. I mean, literally about balance. Mm-hmm. But it's also, you know, it's not a literal balance. It's also a figurative balance. And I think that's what she needs, is to balance things and just kind of, the last line is breathe deeply, Jules. Just let it, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And I think when you're in the crunch the way she is, mm-hmm. you don't know that it's going to be okay. And I think that's what he's doing for her in the movie. You know, it is. It's not a romance, but I do consider it a bit of a love story. And he, you know, I set my thesis out in the beginning. The first line is, you know, Freud said, life is, I forget the exact words, but life is two things, you know, love and work. So I start him without love and without work, and then I give him both. Mm.
What were the conversations that you had with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway about the characters, and what were the important things to them in terms of what they wanted to bring to Ben and Jules, and how did you incorporate their ideas into the performance?
Well, Bob's a pretty, I'm sure some of you have worked with him, he's a pretty quiet guy. He's very much wants to hear what you want, wants to give you that. Yeah, he's not trying to turn neither one of these actors are the type that want to make it their own, which is good for me because I spent a long time on the script and it took a while to get it going, and I was confident in the script, so I didn't really want to reinvent too much. But I've mentioned to you outside, I probably had more wardrobe fittings with Bob than I have with any other actor. And to me, and I'm part of this, it looks like he's in the same suit in every scene. but he's, you know, you learn a lot about actors from wardrobe fittings because it's the first time you get to really hang out with them, just the two of you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I could see the way he stood in front of the mirror. I saw him becoming Ben. I would say one of the only arguments, and it was hardly an argument, was that I wanted button-down shirts because my dad wore them, the button-down collar, mm-hmm. and he wanted more spread, like the collar you have, a spread collar. So we tested both, and we sat in the screening room. He was sitting right here, and after we saw him in both, I looked like, and he just said, button down. It looked straighter. It looked a little less hip, and we liked that. It was a more conservative look.
And who came up with the business where he buttons his jacket whenever he stands, and he stands whenever a woman walks up to him?
I'd written that he stands all the time, and Bob did that on his own.
What about Annie and her costume fittings? If you're learning a lot about character through costume, what about with Annie?
Yeah. She started out wanting a little bit more of a funkier look than I did, and then when we sort of hit on a kind of a modern-day Katharine Hepburn, mm-hmm. then she sort of let some of that go. But she's also she's a wonderful person, besides being so enormously talented. And again, they wanted to be in this movie the way I wanted it to be. You know, they weren't there to rock the boat.
You said
Which I think is why it feels, I don't know if you felt this, but I mean, I feel that there's like a smoothness and an ease to the movie, and you can feel everybody's going in the same direction.
You said this was not an easy movie to get made.
Hardly.
Does that, I mean, on the spectrum of hard movies to get made, where
Hardest.
Does it... Why was that? What did people tell you when they didn't want to make it?
Well, you know, well, that's an interesting question, but they don't really tell you that. You just know they're not making it. I would get very close. They read it, they like it. I would go in, I'd meet, we'd actually get a budget. Somebody even gave me some notes, which were, can you make it shorter so it'll be cheaper? Then it doesn't, then it's, yeah, great, we love it, and then it doesn't happen at the last minute. That happened at a couple of places. And finally I was going to do it independently, which made me nervous because I've been making studio movies for 30-some years. But I was going to do it. And things changed at Warner's. There was a different group of people there, and they were one of the companies that had gone kind of far with me on it. So I said, let's just try one more time. Let's send it back. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, they said they were going to do it. I was so thrilled because I loved making the movie there.
Well, but it's so rare.
But I was going to bury the script in my backyard. If that if that last Warner's thing didn't happen, I have no idea how to like work a shovel, but I was going to go to the hardware store and buy a shovel and figure it out. I was invited on my friends because they'd been hearing me talk about it for so long.
And have like a wake and actually bury the...
Yeah, I was going to buy a box and put all my and just put it in my backyard.